Hey there, this is the last and final day, day 7, where you're going to take your starter and you're going to actually make your first loaf of bread using the starter that we've been growing up for 6 days. Let's get started. Hey, so day 2, and what this is your poolish. We made this last night. This will be 150 grams of your starter for your batch of bread. The recipe we're going to be making today is the Olmsted Township sourdough. Okay, recipe's right here. I'll post this in the notes. Real simple. 150 grams of starter. It's already measured out. You're fine. Tear off your scale. $360 grams of water. All right, so 500 grams of flour total, 360 grams of water. If you do the math, it's like 60% or something like that. It's a pretty wet dough. Yeah, this thing's in real time, sorry. Mixing bowl. What else would it be? Come on, Merc. Tear. 480 grams of white flour, all-purpose. You can use bread flour if you want to here. It'll be a little bit more chewy. It's okay. Whole wheat flour, 10 grams.
Very serious today, Dan Merck. I have to wish you a happy birthday. It's Dan Merck's birthday. Happy birthday, honey.
I'm not feeding the trolls. 10 grams of rye flour. The wheat flour and the rye flour are going to give it a little bit of flavor. Again, only 10 grams. We have a total of 500 grams of flour in here. Spoon, mix up your starter. It's going to look like this. It should be floating right now. That means because it's super healthy. Healthy meaning that there's some bubbles in there, carbon dioxide, that kind of stuff. Should float to the top. It'll just let you know that you have a healthy starter. Going well, pour it in. What you want to do is you want to mix this up to incorporate it so that you get rid of all the dry flour. You want this to be completely incorporated so that the flour is sort of a shaggy mess. No dry flour. Leave this sit here for a minute. Salt. 10 grams. 10 grams of salt. Do not mix it in here. Break the salt down. I'm going to mix it up with my spoon. Set that aside. We're going to let this rest for 15 minutes. The reason why we let this rest is what we want to do is we want to do what's called autolyze. We want that flour and that water to really soak in and bind to all those flour grains and incorporate themselves. That'll also help relax the gluten a little bit and get us ready to start mixing the bread. Make sure you have clean hands because the next step is with your hands. Salt, we're not going to add it right now. We're going to add it after our first turn. The reason why we do that is we want to give the yeast a jump start. Sodium chloride, table salt, not iodized salt. You want to use kosher salt. This stuff will slow down yeast growth, and because we just started this starter, we want it to have the best jump start. So leave this sit aside for now. See you in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Okay, here's our bread. Sat her for a bit. I'm going to take this out of the bowl. We're going to incorporate the salt. So we're going to take it in a little bit at a time and just sort of rub it on that dough. Okay, I know what you're saying. Why did you do that? Why did you set aside the salt? Well, here's the thing. Autolysis or autolyzed flour is really not what we're doing here. Actually, what I should have done is added just the flour and water together and then just added the starter later on, but it's okay. It's fine. You'll be all right. I know bread nerds are going to look at this and leave all kinds of trolling comments. No big deal. Okay, this method of kneading the dough is called slap and fold. It works great with wet dough. Throw it back in the bowl. And we're going to cover it with plastic wrap. Let this sit and rest for 20 minutes. Every 20 minutes for 3 times, so 20, 40, 60 minutes, over an hour. Every 20 minutes, you're going to take it and stretch it and roll it over itself. Stretch it and roll it over itself. Stretch it. You're going to do that 3 times. Then you're going to leave it alone until it doubles in size. Catch you in a few minutes. Okay, real simple. Stretch from one end, turn it. Stretch from one end, turn it. I do it like 4 quadrants. All 4 corners. Just all you're doing is you're just trying to build up that gluten, redistribute that yeast. All right, this thing's been fermenting, which is called bulk ferment, for several hours. I want to say 3 hours. Yours might take a little longer. What we're doing here is we're going to do our final slap and fold kneading. Just, again, lift it up, drop it on itself, and flip it on top. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place it in a container and set it in the fridge overnight between 8 or 24 hours. 8 hours if you don't like it sour, 24 if you like it really sour. Purpose of that is that's going to really bring up that lactic acid and have it turn into that sourdough. Okay, next day. I let this thing go about 12 hours. Looks like it doubled in size. Bulk ferment. I'm going to open some flour. I know adding raw flour is not ideal, but all we're doing here is just adding a little bit of flour so we can get it out. We're going to put some flour on the work surface. A lot of bread makers like to use just rice flour because rice flour is not, it's not the same as using regular white flour. I don't know what the deal is, but people don't like raw white flour. Who knew? I just kind of ran with this, add a little bit of flour. Again, this is, eyeballing. Okay, so that thing I got in my hand, that's called a what is that? A banneton. Sorry, banneton. That's it's a French. Yeah, it's regular flour. Sorry about that, B-roll. So the banneton is great because what that does is that gives it a surface to rise on. And so here what we're doing is we're going to just kind of degas it just a little bit. We don't want to get rid of all of those bubbles, but you'll see there's going to be some pretty big bubbles in there. Like, check this out. Watch this. I start to push it around a little bit. Boop, there's a big old bubble right there. It's awesome. So this is a really healthy sourdough starter. It's working really well. So I'm going to just kind of tuck it on top of itself and create like a nice tight ball. I just want this thing to be really nice and sharp. I'm going to play around with this for a few minutes and then we're going to drop it in the banneton and we're going to let that proof. If you do not have a banneton, and I'm sure many of you do not, it's totally fine. Take a tea towel. Take something that doesn't have a lot of, not a terry cloth, but a tea towel. Dust it with flour. Stick it in a bowl. You'll be just fine. It's all good. Okay, so we're going to do one final ferment. This is going to be that last ferment. We're going to put some plastic wrap on it, cover it with a tea towel, some sort of towel. We're going to let it sit for about an hour, hour and a half or so. This is now time to warm your oven up to 490 degrees. Hey there. Okay, so here's what we've done. Night before, we put that starter that was in the mason jar. We took a couple spoonfuls out of that, mixed it up. Made our levain, our poulish, our biga, whatever you want to call it. That was put into a bowl. It fermented overnight. First thing we did in the morning, we mixed up a batch of dough. It's been fermenting most of the afternoon. It went into the refrigerator. sat in the refrigerator for 6 hours, I think. 6. Comes out of the refrigerator, goes on the board. We threw it around a couple times. We put it into our final ferment, which is what we have here. Okay, so let's take a look at this here. You got your final ferment. It bounces back where it's supposed to be. We're all good. We're all good here? Okay. A couple things that you're going to need to do when you make bread. Okay? Not everybody's going to have this stuff. I get it. I totally understand. We'll improvise. We'll do what we need to do. Parchment paper. Really important. Okay? Parchment paper. Parchment paper is, you're going to put this on top of the parchment paper and move it around. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to take and you're going to use a peel. If you don't have a peel, use a sheet pan. You need an oven, which you can't see right now, but the oven is set to 490 degrees. I've got it warmed up. I also have a pizza stone, which you may not be able to see right now, I can't tell. But there's this pizza stone in there. And then that's it. That's all you need. For those of you that have the other stuff that I'm talking about, let's take it a step further. So we also have what's called a hotel pan. You can see this thing's pretty beat up, kind of gross. But what I do with this is I peel the bread with the peel onto the pizza stone. I put this on top of it and throw some ice cubes in here. What it does is it creates a steam jacket. If those of you that have electric ovens with the little coil thingy at the bottom, you should be fine. It's completely sealed. This dough, I think I said, is at a 65, 70% hydration. It's really wet. There's going to be a lot of steam coming off of this bread. That's fine. For those of us that have gas ovens, the problem with gas ovens is that the back of the oven has a vent, and that means any moisture leaves the oven. It's the way that it vents it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to
encapsulate. Uneven. Gas ovens are really uneven.
See, she knows what she's doing. She sits right there all the time. So what's cool about this is you put this on top of it, and it creates a steam jacket. Now there are some of you that are just professional bread makers. They have what's called a cloche. I think that's what it's called. It's a clay pot. Some of you bake them in Dutch ovens. That's pretty smart. You take a cast iron pan and then you take a Dutch oven and put it on top of it. That also works too. This is what is going to make your sourdough bread a game changer. Steam is very, very important. Okay, and so I'll go through how we're going to do all that in a few minutes. Another thing too is this is where you become an artist. Take a knife and you're going to do what's called slashing. You're going to slash that loaf of bread. Now I'll go through this, okay? So we'll make sure that we're doing this together. But that slashing is really going to make that bread crack. It's going to pop. It's going to get that nice little crispy, decorative parts. It's going to make it look pro style, okay? So let's get started. Next step is we're up to temperature right now. I'm going to peel this thing onto the pizza stone, and I'll show you how to prep this up and get it going. We'll also do some slashing. All right, so this is the part I was talking about. You put it on the parchment paper. Now, this little tool that I have, it's a razor blade with I think that might be like one of those like lobster meat things. I'm not sure. But that razor blade gives a nice sharp cut. And then that peels it right in the oven. Now, you can get really creative with it. You should Google some of these examples. There's some really cool slashing techniques that are out there. There's ice. So the ice goes in there next. You're going to hear it sizzle for a little bit. So the ice goes in, and then we put the hotel pan on it. I leave it in there for about 20 minutes for the first part of baking, and then pull it. All right, so this thing baked for a good 50 minutes, I think, at 490 degrees for 20 minutes with the whole thing sealed up. Wow, the smell of that is amazing. Look at the rise on that thing. Dum, dum, dum. There's like a nice tap that you get at the bottom. You just know you hit that right temperature and stuff, but it's, wow. That loaf of bread turned out amazing. It literally lasted, I think, 8 hours. I think we ate the whole thing. So definitely see if you can double up on that. All right, if you have any questions, comments, come on, feel free. Look at that B-roll. B-roll's pretty cool. Do me a favor, subscribe because I'm going to be throwing some more videos out there. I've got a rye bread going on right now, which is pretty cool. But this should get you, all of you, some good crusty bread. 50 minutes was in the oven. Like I said, 20 minutes at 490. I pulled the hotel pan out, and then I let it go for a little while longer. It's not bad. Man, this color correction's awful, though. Sorry, I can only shoot this stuff at night, and lighting's an issue right now, but nice white, crispy, and then soft inside, chewy, nice crust, awesome crumb. I'm really stoked with this. So hopefully you guys are doing the same thing. And hugs. Love you guys. Follow me on Twitter.